So much of what we focus on when we're trying to conceive is about getting to that positive pregnancy test. And if you're anything like me, you would do whatever you could to get there. But it wasn't until many years into my own fertility journey that I realized the focus shouldn't be on getting pregnant, but ultimately staying pregnant and bringing a healthy baby into the world. And when I made that shift, I feel like the path to that positive test got so much shorter. Welcome to Your Journey to Fertility. This is the podcast that blends both science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Here each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so you can stop stressing that you'll never have a baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for being here with me today and listening and tuning in. It is just always such an honor that you share your time with me. So thank you. Today's episode, I'm speaking with special guest Stefanie Adler, who is a functional health practitioner who specializes in women's health, hormones, fertility, and she helps women to feel their best by becoming the experts of their own bodies. I absolutely love this mission statement because it is so aligned with everything that I teach and everything that I do as well. I love this idea of I'm going to give you all of the tools. I'm going to show you how to nourish yourself, work with your body, and then you're the one that really takes ownership over that. And I find it is just such a powerful thing to be able to teach someone. I spoke on Steph's podcast earlier this year, and I quickly realized that our approaches are so similar, and we just were so aligned on so many things. So I wanted to bring her onto my podcast today. So she goes deep into the science and does a lot of functional testing and preconception detoxing, which she talks about in this conversation, which is all incredibly important, as we well know. But what she also talks about, and what I also love about her work, is her emphasis on being guided by your own intuition and to be guided by a spiritual path at the same time. She's all about slowing down and listening deeply to your body and just finding that connection to what you really want. So this is a really informative, but also really fun conversation. So I hope you enjoy. Here's Steph. I'm so happy that we finally got this time together to come and chat. You are such an amazing wealth of knowledge, and I can't wait to get into everything that we're going to talk about today. But can we start by learning a little bit about you and the work that you do?
Yeah. And I'm so excited to be here. I know there was just so many life things and I feel like it's made all the anticipation of us having this conversation even better, that we had to wait a little longer. It's like, the flirting. So,
So true.
my background is really influenced by I had a lot of health issues when I was a kid. And a lot of those health issues were echoed in one of my aunts. Well, she and I had a similar disposition. We had all the same, stomach problems. We had the same painful periods, all the things. I was kind of like her mini me. And she really struggled to get pregnant with her children. And this was back way before IVF was like as commonplace as it is now. She was doing in vitro to get pregnant with her kids. And I just remember how hard it was for her. And I kind of had this like stress about, is that going to be me? I know I want to be a mom so badly. Am I going to have that same struggle as my aunt did? That kind of like stayed with me throughout most of my life. And I mentioned that I had digestive issues. So actually as a teen, I healed myself of my digestive issues by taking control of my health through my diet, when my doctor said that it wouldn't help me with any of my digestive issues. I started changing my diet. Within 3 months, symptoms I'd been having for 13 years went away. And I just became like mind blown as like food can be medicine, or food is a catalyst for dis-ease in the body, and really started me down that wellness path. And then fast forward 10 years later, I have graduated college with a degree in conflict resolution. My mom had told me when I went to college, you should be a nutritionist. And I was like, shut up, mom, you know nothing about me, as a 17-year-old would. And now I cringe because Please God, let my kids never talk to me like that. But anyways, I decided I had gone abroad to get my degree in conflict resolution. When I came back, I realized, at least in the United States, this is what was on the TV. It was a junk food, and then a commercial for a pharmaceutical, and then a commercial for junk food and for a pharmaceutical. And no one was putting the pieces together. So I went back to school for nutrition because I had always been passionate about it. And I was like, okay, I actually have to do something about this. No one is getting that these two things are connected. And while I was in school for that, I started learning so much about just the female body, and everything kind of just came full circle to me. And because of my own insecurities around fertility, thinking like, is this going to happen for me? I decided I wanted to spend this time learning everything I could about the female body, about preconception, all the way through baby's first foods. How do we then gift this, the next generation a gift of health? And it just really inspired my journey from there.
And it's so frustrating, isn't it? It's like, where did we lose this knowledge? I feel like maybe our grandmas, especially, our great grandmas, there wasn't this reliance on, I need a medicine or a medication to fix me, or, to help me get through it. They really looked at, what can I include in my diet and what can I do within my life to kind of nourish and support my body? And it is so frustrating. So thank you for sharing all of that. And when it came to the time that you decided to have a family, can you share what happened then?
Sure. So when I say this, I always just like to remind people that nothing is actually like accidental, even though sometimes it feels that way. So my partner and I had planned on wanting to start working towards conceiving our family. And you'll hear me, I'm very cautious around the language of trying. I actually really hate, from a manifestation perspective, when people say we're trying to have a baby. So you'll see me kind of find my weird word ways around it. And it's just so that I'm always manifesting and modeling also for people how we don't use the language of trying. So if you're like, why is she saying that in a weird way? That's why. So we had planned on starting to conceive and just grow our family in the later fall. And it's actually a bit of a funny story. I had been preparing for conception by really working on, my gut health and my minerals and my full body wellness for years. But we had wanted to start this process in the late fall. And back before we had a kid, we went to Burning Man every year, which is a big festival here. And it's not really a festival, but it's kind of a way of explaining it, here in the United States. And I didn't bring my temperature tracker because I didn't want it to get messed up and sandy and dirt. Everything that goes to Burning Man comes back and is never the same again, including you, but mostly your things. And I used one of the armbands, and it's kind of expensive. And so I was like, you know what? My cycle has been literally to the dot, so regular for the last year and a half since I had the C word. It's fine. I don't need to bring it. I'm going to ovulate at Burning Man. I know that we'll use protection, etc. So we come back from Burning Man, and we were careful at Burning Man. But I actually have a story about this on my podcast. It's really beautiful. And I really encourage people to listen to it, because our spirit baby was in the tent with us. It was crazy. We had this moment where we're should we do it? And I could feel him there. And then we were not ready yet. But anyways, we get back from Burning Man, and I put my armband back on, and my temperature is tracking low still. But it was also giving me a low battery signal. And I was like, oh, it must be that it's a low battery. I for sure ovulated at Burning Man. And so we were having unprotected sex. And then 2 days later, my temperature went up. And I looked at my husband and I said, I bet I'm pregnant. And 10 days later, my husband left the house, and I felt like I wasn't alone. And I took a pregnancy test, and there he was. So really was such a blessing. And I feel like it was divinely intervened, and because we weren't actually going for it, even though we had been so intentional. And when I share that, I really want to encourage people that it wasn't just oh, she necessarily got lucky. Maybe there was a little bit of that, but I had been preparing my body for conception for years.
Yeah. And for years, we think that once we get pregnant, we need to stop drinking, stop, eating the junk food. But it really is this long period of time leading up to that point of conception that is so, so important. So let's talk about that a little bit. So when you see women coming to you and they see you for fertility issues, what else are they struggling with in their life? What is their health looking like? What other symptoms are presenting?
Yeah. I mean, it can be really broad ranging. A lot of times I'm seeing digestive issues. So that could be like a diagnosed digestive issue, but most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's like, oh yeah, I get bloated after meals, or, oh, like I just sometimes have these like weird bouts where I go a few days without pooping and then I like, go and then it's not so great. It can be kind of what like people have normalized, but it's not normal. It's just common, like some digestive issues. A lot of times I'll also see thyroid conditions, some of which are diagnosed and a lot of which are not. So one of the things that I do with clients is I do a hair mineral analysis test, and it's so insightful. We get insight into your thyroid function, into your adrenal function. We see your blood sugar stability, which is the foundation for all metabolic health and fertility and all the things. And a lot of times I'll see someone is indicating that they have a really sluggish thyroid. And a lot of times it clinically won't even be showing up in the blood work, but it's because potassium isn't there enough to fuel the cell. And so I kind of describe it like if you had an employee who like showed up to work every day and had his butt in the chair and was like moving the cursor around, but wasn't getting anything done, but he's like being marked as present. It's not like productive. He's not doing his job, but that's kind of like what thyroid hormones a lot of times will do on the blood work. It's like they'll look like they're there. They look like they're doing something, but they're not actually doing their job. So a lot of times I'll see thyroid conditions, a lot of either stress, and I know this is something you know a lot about, but like a lot of stress, which then can translate to adrenal fatigue if the stress has been going on for a long period of time, where like the body is just like, I can't keep showing up for you. And then occasionally I'll also see things like endometriosis or PC. I mean, not occasionally, a lot of times I'll see like endometriosis, PCOS, and some of these like more obvious hormonal conditions that can be impacting fertility.
Mm. And so can you explain how something like gut health has such an impact on fertility? Because you're right, it is so normalized that we just, we get bloated and we get so sluggish after meals and, things are not regular every day. And so how does that have such a big impact on fertility?
How much time do we have?
Go, Steph.
So, I mean, there's so many different levels. So on the one hand, I mean, we're like on the modern science side, we're seeing that there are like certain bacteria in the gut that are associated with unexplained infertility. So like sometimes I'll see a woman who's like been trying to get pregnant for 3 years, never been pregnant. I see this bacteria, which we know that your bacteria in your gut mimics what's in your vagina. The vaginal microbiome is very connected to what's in the gut. And there are actual bacteria that are associated with unexplained infertility because they're interfering with the way potentially sperm meets the egg. I mean, there's so much more that we're trying to learn here. Something else that we need to think about when it comes to gut health and bacteria. So again, you have like approximately 3 pounds. Like imagine a 3-pound weight. Approximately 3 pounds of bacteria that live in your digestive tract that are like controlling everything. They're controlling our mental health. They're controlling our metabolism. They're controlling our peristalsis or our digestion. They're controlling if our immune system is strong or not. I mean, there's so many layers and we're really just scratching the surface. But that bacteria can also travel to other parts of the body. And we now know that the womb is not a sterile place. We actually know that, like even just like when you are pregnant, your baby starts swallowing amniotic fluid. That's their first starting to get their gut microbiome. So we know that this bacteria is traveling. So if that bacteria is out of balance because potentially you've taken antibiotics, not just recently, but like at any time in your life, and we're killing off a specific set of microbes, others will come in and be opportunistic and take over. We'll have yeast or other parasites or other things that can influence the imbalance of those bacteria. And that can spread and become inflammatory in other parts of the body. So we can see this in the uterus. We can see this even, again, like dad's groin and interfering with like when you guys are having sex. There's so many ways in which it actually can interfere with the process of getting pregnant. Mm-hmm. And that's not even going into the inflammation element. So Hippocrates said, like literally thousands of years ago, that all disease begins and ends in the gut. Mm-hmm. And he's not wrong. Everything, most of the time, the 2 tests that I do with clients from a functional lab perspective are the minerals and the gut, because the gut is really where we're starting to see like where sources of inflammation might be coming from. And so if there's inflammation in the gut, it's going to translate through the body. And so you might be someone who has 0 gut issues. I see this all the time. I'm super regular. I don't have any gut issues. Everything is good in my gut. Why are we doing the stool sample? But we see major inflammation and it's translating to issues with fertility or neurological, like anxiety, depression, whatever it is.
Wow. Okay. And so what are some of the treatments for something like that? Because, I had, very few gut issues when I was trying to conceive. And this was never mentioned to me. Like, no doctor is talking about, let's do a stool sample and check out your inflammation levels in your gut. So say someone doesn't have any symptoms, but they do a stool sample and it looks like there is a high marker for inflammation. Like, where do you start to heal that?
Yeah, it really depends on the person and their, individual lifestyle and like what other things that we're finding. So there's truly so there's no one answer to this, but we really start thinking about anti-inflammatory diet in general. And my version of an anti-inflammatory diet is so different than probably what most people think. Most people are probably like, oh, quinoa and broccoli and like some salmon. No, like it's actually very rich in animal fats, like very nutrient dense, and actually a lot of times reducing. Doesn't mean we do want antioxidants, and like a lot of antioxidants are found in like deeply pigmented, phytonutrients and things like plants. But we're really actually focusing more on those like really healing foods for the gut, which are usually like meat stock, liver, other animal fats, bone marrow, things like that. So we're really focusing on like reducing inflammation and also sealing the gut lining, because that's where so much of then the inflammation starts to travel to other parts of the body. So really focusing again on those meat stocks, collagen rich foods that really start to seal and heal the gut. A lot of times we'll also bring in anti-inflammatory support from things like cod liver oil, fish oils, resveratrol, some of these like more potent antioxidants that we know about from like a supplement perspective. And I find that this is really also twofold when it comes to fertility, because a lot of times when we're struggling with egg quality, it's a result of oxidative stress in the body, which antioxidants are literally the antidote for oxidative stress. So oftentimes while we're really working on healing the gut, we're also therefore supporting egg quality, because everything in the body is so connected. And so we'll really start to see how this translates to people having successful pregnancies.
Yeah, amazing. It is so interrelated, isn't it? We kind of get taught that our medical system is so siloed. You go to a doctor for a thyroid condition and you're going to be referred to an endocrinologist, but then there are so many flow-on effects of having that thyroid condition that are not necessarily addressed with that particular doctor. So it is, I just love this holistic approach of just getting back to these basics. And I think when you learn this stuff, like it's so powerful, isn't it? You feel like you have so much more control over your own health and your own outcomes, which I just find is so missing, especially in the women's health world. So let's talk a little bit more about, why is it so important to prepare your body for conception? And can you talk a little bit about detoxing prior to getting pregnant? And, what does that look like? Are we doing juice cleanses? Like, what are we doing in terms of a detox?
Totally. And one thing just to add on to the gut piece is like, we're really always addressing it at the root. And that's kind of where it comes to with these things too. Like the root of why someone has inflammation is going to be different for different people. And so that's why it's like, we're going to use some of those things for everyone, but then it's really about coming to like, what are the specific toxins that we're trying to detox you from? Or, and like really thinking about how integrated it is, because like the entire body is one full system. You're absolutely right about that. So the preconception, I always call it the pregnancy promotion. You don't just show up on your first day of work and are like, I'm ready for the CEO job, you know? Like you work your way up the ladder. Like it's important not just for the success of the company and for like your own well-being in the job, but like there's skills learned along the way and like you're calibrating to that role. And pregnancy, really, we should think about it this way. It's like we put in the work to get in the pregnancy promotion, not only because I'm not in the business of helping women get pregnant. I'm in the business of healthy babies and healthy pregnancies. Like it's not just about, okay, I'm pregnant, because that you're missing the point, right? Like it's about, how do I have a full-term pregnancy? How do I have a healthy pregnancy? And then a child that is inheriting health instead of inheriting my toxic burden and inheriting my imbalanced gut bacteria, right? Because all of these are things we pass on. So to have a healthy pregnancy and healthy baby, we really want to set our bodies up for that through detox and through, again, healing and sealing and supporting the gut. Now, one of my hypotheses about fertility, and it's actually, I recently was recording a podcast with one of my mentors. Her name is Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. She's the founder of the GAPS diet. And I saw her at a conference in October, and she was talking about how increasingly more and more in her practice, she's finding that women are having 2, 3, 4 pregnancy losses before they're carrying a baby to full term. And why she thinks this is happening at the rates that it is that our world is becoming increasingly toxic. And it's a poor biological design, but what the body does is it uses pregnancy as an opportunity to detox, as an opportunity to clean house. So when you get pregnant, your body's like, ooh, opportunity to offload some of these toxins I've been storing in parts of my body that I don't know what to do with, passes them to the fetus. And if it's enough of a toxic load, it'll cause a miscarriage. And while it's devastating when that happens, it is lightening the load, and then you can go on to have a hopefully successful, healthy pregnancy. And sometimes because our toxic load is so high, we're doing that multiple times. So to prevent this from happening, or do our best possible job of preventing this from happening, we can bring in external detox practices so that we're not relying on our body's internal detox practice. And this looks really different for different people in terms of sometimes I'll run total toxin testing and see you have high levels of BPA, you have high levels of mercury, you have high levels of, molds, whatever it is. Different people will have a different toxic burden. But another just thing I want to share about this before I get into specifically how you detox is because I think this can actually be really empowering. I think a lot of people, because this is a lot of how the media talks about it and just doctors are talking about it, are putting some of our fertility crisis on the fact that people are starting to have families much older. Instead of the average woman starting a family at 21, it's now 30 or whatever it is. My thing, though, is that historically, yes, women started earlier, but they had a lot more kids and they were having them in their late 30s and early 40s too. So that doesn't actually really explain what's going on here. What I more so think is happening, and my mentor recently actually just confirmed this for me when I was talking to her, is that a 21-year-old has a lot less toxic burden accumulated than a 31-year-old, right? That's 50% more toxicity that you've accumulated in your body in that extra 10 years than that 21-year-old has. And so we really need to be thinking about it from this perspective, just to frame that of maybe this is a bigger part of it than anyone is talking about. So anyways, I can stop there for a second because that was a lot of talking. I know I didn't get to the root of your question yet, but if there's anything you want to
I do. I have so many questions on that. That makes so much sense, doesn't it? And when you talk about this idea that doctors like to blame a lot of our fertility issues on age, I mean, that doesn't explain why women and couples of all ages are having a decline in fertility rates. It's not just those who are over 35 or over 40. 25-year-olds are also having far less pregnancies and good pregnancy outcomes than they were, 10, 20 years ago. So you're right. It doesn't explain everything, just the age part. So we can't remove all of the toxins from our world. I know we can remove some of them, but I have a question around, this idea that, your body might use pregnancy as a way to detox. But what if it is the male partner that is experiencing the highest sort of toxic load, and how does our body as a woman deal with that, and what can we do to help that?
Yeah. So a few different things here. So the first one is that semen is a way that the male body detoxifies and gets rid of toxins. And so if that semen is being deposited in the woman's body on a regular basis, she's absorbing those toxins. And so it's really you can't win. No, I'm just kidding. You can definitely win because you can guys both detox together. It's super important. And I really think that it takes two to tango. And we also know that the sperm is responsible for creating the placenta, and that can influence so much of how healthy a pregnancy is. And also that toxic burden being passed to baby. And this is another part again of why this is so important is so those toxins that dad has are also going into baby. If they're in its semen and in its sperm, it's not just coming from the mom. It's a little bit of a different mechanism, but they both play a pretty critical role. And so I really recommend that dads to be detox a lot too. I mean, it's really, I would say, like, in a perfect world, both parties detoxing for about a year before getting pregnant. Not everyone is going to do that. And I recognize that. And I have plenty of clients who respectively tell me to like F off when I say that. And we like make a really strong plan for them in 4 months or 6 months. And we can get a lot done if we're really effective there. But one of the things, and I mean, I was actually thinking about this when you and I were talking about how we wanted to talk about detox on this podcast, is like, when you came on my podcast, we titled it How Slowing Down Will Help You Get Pregnant. And I love, and I was like, oh my God, the connection here is wild, because one of the reasons we are all, it's not just the toxins in our environment. Yes, there are more of those, but it's also the lifestyle we are living, which is go, 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 which never allows our body to get out of fight or flight. And we will not detox when we are in fight or flight. You need to be in rest and digest to turn on the parasympathetic to have all of those detox systems work really well. So it really is about like, yes, we do all these detox practices, but also like part of it is like slowing down and allowing your body to detox, like resting more and all of these things. So roundabout way of like, this is how dad does it, but like really thinking about how do both parties contribute to this process, and, you know, do coffee enema parties with your partner. It's super fun. Like, I don't know, like there's just so many ways to like make this fun and do it together.
So, like, I would never have thought I would be having these conversations 10 years ago. This is brilliant. Okay, so what is a detox then? Like, are we doing a juice cleanse? Like, talk about what does a detox look like? And yes, it's obviously going to be a little bit different for everyone, but what are the sort of main things we need to think about?
Totally. So the first thing is, before you actually think about detox, you have to think about drainage. And I have like a free, it's called the Simple Detox Guide, where it breaks this down in detail for anyone who's listening who really wants to see this like visually laid out. But I want you to think about, there's like a drainage funnel in your body. So imagine like a sink, you know, like there's like a funnel going down. And at the bottom of that drainage funnel is your colon. Okay. Then we have the liver and bile ducts, one layer up. Then we have the lymphatic system, and then we have our organs, tissues, and cells. Now, detox and drainage is happening throughout every single step of that process. But anyone who's ever had a clogged sink knows that like nothing's getting past the area that's clogged, right? So if your colon, again, if you're constipated, if your like digestive system is not working well, then like it doesn't matter how well your lymphatic system is working or how well your liver is working. If things can't get out at the bottom of that funnel, it's no use. So a lot of times people will go and do the juice cleanse or do like a detox that they found online or take all these supplements, and then they feel worse. And their body is just basically taking toxins out. Here's a good visual. Imagine you have a house that's like a hoarder's home, and you decide we're going to clean it out. Okay. But you're locked inside the house with none of the doors and windows open.
Oh, it's my worst nightmare, Steph.
So you're just moving stuff from room to room, right? And you're not actually cleaning anything out. It's just like getting moved from room to room. Now imagine that in your body, you're just moving toxins from organs to organs. Like they're not actually able to get out. So before you even think about detox, you got to focus on drainage. And then a lot of people, once they're doing the drainage, once their gut is working effectively, once their liver is, being more efficient and their bile is producing more and their lymphatic system is open and they're, dry brushing. And lymphatic system is super interesting because like it doesn't have a pump, like our heart has a pump. It's doing that work for us, but the lymphatic system, we are the pump. So like we have to move and we have to do things and massage to move things. So anyways, once all of that's working well, a lot of times your body will detox itself. And it's like, okay. And then sometimes, depending on what's going on, we bring in tools to basically bind and help the body pull those toxins out if they're in like further to reach places. But if we're all focused on doing drainage, making sure we're having bowel movements within every 24 hours, making sure that our liver is not overloaded and our bile is working efficiently and we're eating good, healthy fats and we're like, moving our lymphatic system and doing yoga and doing, your Pilates and all these things, then a lot of times it'll work itself out. But a lot of that also relies on us being in rest and digest and not fight or flight.
Yeah, that is such an important point, isn't it? And people are like, well, how does that even work? And, how does stress make such a huge impact on, your ability to do all of these things? So can we talk about that? Can we talk about how stress impacts digestion and your ability to detox and your overall health, really?
So the way that I explain it, I mean, everyone knows about fight or flight, right? Like not everyone, but most people who are, tuning into this conversation have probably heard that before. So when we are in fight or flight, it is exclusive, meaning you cannot be in what I call not just rest and digest, which more people will know about, but feed and frolic. Now, feeding, that makes sense. Digestion, eating, right? Your body cannot, and I repeat for the people in the back louder, you cannot digest your food. You cannot absorb your nutrients well if you are stressed. So if you are eating in front of your computer while you work and you're not paying attention, or you're having a stressful conversation with your partner about how much money you're spending on fertility things, whatever it is, right? You're not digesting your food well. I have, with my clients, I do like a food journal when we first get started. And one of my questions is like, who are you eating with? Where are you eating? And then not just what are you eating? It's who are you eating with? Where are you eating? And how did you feel before and after a meal? And I once had a client who realized that she like always felt really not good in terms of her digestion after dinner. And she noticed that she was always eating dinner with her husband, and they were using that as a time to talk through, they were moving actually from Australia to America. And like, there was a lot with the green card and this, and there was like a lot of logistics, and they were always using dinner as their meeting time. She shifted to stopping doing that and taking some deep breaths before she ate. And all of a sudden she wasn't having stomach aches after dinner anymore. So stress like literally will turn off the way that you absorb your food well, because your body does not think that digestion and absorbing nutrients is top priority if you're being chased by a tiger, and your body doesn't know the difference between 100 emails and a tiger chasing you. So that's the first way it's really impacting digestion. I mean, there's more. Like stress will degrade your secretory IgA, which is the primary immune system in the gut. And then when you're having immune issues, that can translate to fertility in a million ways. But it also obviously deeply impacts the gut. I mean, there are so many ways, but the high level is that. And when it comes to reproduction, so the other F, it could be one thing if you let your mind go one way, but it's, I think frolic, like you're frolic, like, little fairies frolicking in a field and just kind of like all being flirty with each other. Again, our body does not think that reproducing is a priority if we are being chased by a tiger. So being stressed will translate to your reproductive function not turning on the way that it should. And this really shouldn't be understated. I mean, it is huge. And something that I always ask my clients is, what would pregnant Jennifer do? Right? Like, what is, like, for example, the people, like, I'll say to someone, I have this woman I'm working with right now. I'm thinking of her specifically. She is a teacher and she coaches a sports team. I don't know what it is, like basketball or something. And so during workout, during training season, she's like running with the people, and she's running like several miles a day training. And I said, would you do that if you were pregnant? No. Well, what would pregnant fill in the name do? Right? Like, we need to bring that to the body that'll help us get pregnant. And so if you would not be working the late nights that you're currently working, or if you would not be, like stressed out in a way because you knew it wouldn't be good for the pregnancy, it's not good for helping the body get pregnant.
Isn't that simple? That's so simple, isn't it? But it's not easy. And that's the thing I always say to people. And, yes, you can override so much of this with fertility drugs and pushing your body and just making it do something that you want it to do. And I've done that and it did work, but I was a mess and I was miserable. And I don't think I handled my pregnancy very well. And I don't think I handled postpartum and the recovery very well. And it certainly set me up for a much more difficult journey the next time I wanted to get pregnant. So I feel like these things can only help you. And yes, you may still need fertility treatments, and that's fine. And that's a reality for so many of us. But wouldn't you want to just give yourself the best possible chance anyway, and then maybe, yes, we do still need to go down the treatment path. But, I love this idea of talking about detoxing, not just for the idea of, becoming pregnant, but then staying pregnant and then having a healthy baby. Like, can you talk a little bit about how your child's health is going to be so impacted by your ability to detox your body, to reduce stress, to do all of these things that you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, so many ways, right? Like the first one, a lot of these start in utero. Like we know that the nervous system is inherited, right? So like if we are feeling stressed out while we're pregnant, if our stress levels are high, that translates to the way that our babies feel safe or not in the world when they're born. And I actually was just talking to this woman and she like blew my mind, and I'm totally not going to do it justice. So I'm not going to say all the like scientific details of it, but it had to do with like the amygdala and the turning it on for signals of safety, and how like if you are like stressed out when your baby is in the womb and then stressed out when they're a little baby, when they go to start eating foods, they'll have a predisposition to like wanting sweet foods to help them feel safe. It goes as far as like, how are you helping your kid like in their relationship with food and sugar addiction later? I mean, like there's so many like ways that we could go with this. But as I mentioned, right, like that, so the nervous system is a huge piece, but also again, baby at approximately like less than 20 weeks in the womb is starting to swallow amniotic fluid, practicing, and they are starting to get your microbiome and your set of gut pathways inoculating them. And then if they're born vaginally, they get another big dose of your, bacteria. If they're born via C-section, it's whatever's on those people's hands. I mean, it's like, so that you have less control over, but you can still do the most you can with, what they were absorbing before. And if they're breastfeeding and they're getting that from you. So basically the entire family is like is sharing this microbiome, sharing this bacterial code. And then we also have, again, a mineral transfer. So in the same way that your body is going to translate those toxins to the baby, it also translates a lot of minerals. And so if you're not properly preparing for pregnancy, a lot of times this is where I'll see postpartum depression, anxiety, it's difficulty losing weight postpartum if your body is out of balance minerally because it gave all those minerals to the baby. And if you started off really depleted and you forced your body to get pregnant via in vitro or IUI or whatever, the baby will be starting from less of a robust mineral landscape, right? And then we have already, I talked about the toxin burden that can get passed on. And so like, this is, we're seeing an epidemic of eczema, asthma, other chronic illnesses for kids. I mean, at least in the United States, I don't know about in Australia, the statistics are astounding. I mean, it's like 54% of kids have chronic illness. And like, everyone I talk to, their kids, oh, so-and-so has eczema, it's like really common. And this is all the picture, right? This is what what we're passing down. And something I'm so passionate about is this concept of what I'm calling generational wellness. We have an opportunity, yes, before we get pregnant and while we're pregnant and, in our baby's first few years of life, to really shape their health for the rest of their life. And that sounds like a big responsibility, but it is. That's like what we take on by having kids, right? Like we are the stewards of their health. And so it really, all of these things really start to impact then how resilient of a body our child is in to be able to manage this toxic world that we live in, right? It's not about completely avoiding toxins. It's about building as robust of a body and a robust system, a resilient system to be able to deal with that toxic burden.
Oh, that's so well put, isn't it? I love that term, generational wellness. It's beautiful. And I think that's really worth pointing out because it's the last thing on your mind when you're struggling to have a family, isn't it? It's like, I've got to get pregnant. I've got to do whatever I can to get pregnant. And then we become pregnant and we forget that that was just a little tiny part of that baby's life, the getting pregnant. So thank you for sharing that. Steph, is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you feel is really important to mention in terms of all of these things coming together? I feel like you have so much knowledge and so much that you share. And for anyone who hasn't listened to your podcast, I'm going to link it in the show notes below. Please go and listen to Steph's podcast because it's awesome. But is there anything else that you want to mention just before we finish up?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that like kind of drives me crazy is how unfortunate it is that our current medical system, which we can be so grateful for on one hand, but so frustrated with on the other, is missing the root causes of infertility. Like, yes, I have clients that still go and do fertility treatments. I recently was just doing my statistics. Over 90% of my clients who work with me either get pregnant during or after working with me, most of whom were infertility treatments and it wasn't working, or were, told that that would be their only pathway, or tried for years without it and get pregnant naturally. And a lot of them have had the testing, quote unquote, done. They have a miscarriage or two, or they haven't gotten pregnant in 6 months or a year, and they go and they get the test done. Everything looks normal. We don't know why you're not pregnant. And it's only once we start utilizing some of these functional labs, right? Looking at your unique mineral status, which is so different than what they're doing in blood work, looking at sources of inflammation in the gut, and looking at toxins in our environment, that we're able to see like, oh, this isn't so unexplained. And by addressing it at the root, like, not only are we changing the course of, your life in terms of like getting you a baby, but you're changing your health for the rest of your life, and you're changing the health of that child. And I mean, the thing that makes me the happiest, truly the happiest, is when all of my clients go on to have their second baby with like so much ease. Like we worked together. It was like so hard. Why did, multiple miscarriages or years without getting pregnant? They went to the doctors, nothing happened. And then, we do this work, we figure out what the root causes are, we address them, we remove enough blocks that the body can come back to balance on its own, get pregnant. And then, 2 years goes by and I get a text message that's like, guess what? Baby number 2 is on the way. And it was easy. And it's because that's the power of the body to like come back into balance. And so I just really want to share with anyone who's like on this journey and stuck and feeling like, I don't know why this isn't happening, or why is this so hard? Like, it's not your fault. One, there are a lot of things going on in this world, in this environment, that we don't have a lot of control over. Some of this we've inherited from our parents, right? So like some of your toxic burden you've inherited. But you do have the power to make the change, right? Even if it's not something you created, you have the power to undo this as part of your destiny. And I just think that that's really empowering. And I just really want to encourage people who are struggling that like, I've got better, and I'm not saying come work with me, but just like, I've got better statistics on the fertility clinics. Like, figure out what the root cause is and know that you've given it your all, because it's truly life-changing.
And it's so frustrating, isn't it? Because we think, there's so much time pressure put on us, and it's like, well, you're 38, you've got to do another round of IVF like now, you're going to miss your chance. And it's just like, yeah, but how much more can you push your body, and how much more money do you want to spend on these crazy expensive treatments? And sometimes we just needed a little bit of TLC. And I think that's just so valuable. And I love the work that you do, Stefan. Thank you for sharing everything today. I really, really appreciate it. Where can people learn more about you? What's the best way to connect with you if you want to learn more about your work and what you do?
Yeah. So Instagram is like my main social media place. So come say hi there if you have an Instagram, and just also come say hi. Like, I love connecting with women in this space. And just like, that's the fun part about social media for me, is like all of these people that I get to meet. And so if I said something today that triggered you, if I said something today that made you really excited, like just come tell me and be like, I heard you on Jennifer's podcast and this was what came up. I'd love to invite you to just connect and say hi. And then, yeah, if you want to learn more about my work, there will be links either on Instagram or my website, stefanieadler.com. I would love to help you grow your family. It's like my favorite thing ever. I have a little baby wall of all the babies, and there's like over 60 of them. They're so special and so cute, and it's amazing. So be my next success story and come say what's up. And then, yeah, my podcast is also a really great place to just learn more. So, and I do want to, I'll send you the link, Jennifer, for that like simple detox guide for anyone who's like, okay, where do I get started with this? That can put you on the path to just really start opening up your drainage system.
Amazing. You're wonderful, Steph. I so appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening right to the end. And Steph's links are all below. So if you want to check out her podcast, her website, or her Instagram and connect with her, you will find all of those links down in the show notes. And remember, if you want to leave me your feedback, or you have a question, or want to suggest a guest or topic for the show, please follow the link to leave me a voice note. I can't tell you how much I love receiving these voice messages from you. There's something I find just really touching about hearing someone's voice. We're so used to receiving emails and texts and messages, but I love language and I love listening to the way people speak. So if you would love to shoot me through a message, I would love to hear it. Now, on the next episode of the podcast, we are talking about slowing down to receive more on your fertility journey. And how does that even work when you're in this space of go, go, go? I have to do a quadrillion things. I can't stop. How do we even get into that space of being able to slow down at all? So can't wait to have you back here for that episode next week. But until then, I am sending you all my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.